381 Navy SEALs were trapped in a kill zone. Mortars raining down from the ridges, seconds away from being wiped out. The F-16 seconds overhead couldn't fire without killing them. The helicopters had already been shot from the sky. Every option was gone, and the only pilot close enough to save them, a woman her own commanders had grounded, mocked as too emotional to fly. What happened next turned into one of the most shocking rescues in military history, because when the A-10 Warthog screamed over the valley, every soldier realized they had underestimated the wrong person. Why did they whisper her name over the radio when hope was gone? How did one simple woman turn humiliation into a firestorm that blasted an entire exit for 381 men? You're about to hear it all, but before we dive in, hit subscribe and ring the bell for A Simple Woman, because these are the stories they'll never put in the history books, and you won't want to miss the next one. 381 SEALs were pinned in a valley where every ridgeline spat fire. Mortars dropped in arcs that shook the ground. Heavy machine guns raked across the rocks, and the sky above them offered no hope. Helicopters were already smoking wreckage, and fast jets could do nothing without hitting their own men. Radios hissed with fragments of desperate voices. "We're cut off, we can't hold." And in the command tent miles away, the only pilot who could save them sat grounded, humiliated, branded too emotional to fly. Captain Erin Callahan stared at the live feed, knuckles white, every instinct screaming. Her commanders thought this was the end of the line. They had no idea the line would bend toward her. What happened in the next hour would etch her name into every man who walked out alive. They whispered it over the comms, a prayer and a curse all at once. Callahan. Erin had never fit the mold the Air Force pressed around its pilots. She was small, barely 5'3", and carried a soft Irish lilt that made her sound younger than her years. At 28, she had logged more hours in the simulator than most men twice her rank. But when she walked into a briefing room, heads tilted with the same doubt, she looked like someone who should be filing reports, not flying steel monsters. Major Lucas Brandt, in particular, had sharpened that skepticism into a weapon. He was a career officer, squared jaw and rigid posture, who had buried one too many pilots lost to cowboy decisions. To him, Erin was a liability dressed up as an officer. He proved it daily, parking her in logistics, shuffling her into mission planning, but never into the cockpit when it mattered. "You're smart," he'd say, tapping her folder, "but smart doesn't keep you calm when rounds start flying." Erin nodded, every time, biting down the retort that smart had kept her alive in Afghanistan when a convoy had gone sideways and she'd picked the one escape route no one else saw. But here, at Harrison Air Base, she swallowed it, biding her time, painting her patience over frustration like camouflage. The A-10 Warthog she'd been assigned to, tail number 271, nicknamed Iron Angel by some long-forgotten crew, sat at the edge of the flight line, a beast of dull grey metal with its shark mouth faded but fierce. Erin would walk past it every dawn, fingers brushing the cold fuselage, whispering checklists under her breath like prayers. The maintainers joked she treated it like a pet. In truth, it was the only thing on this base that understood her. The Warthog didn't care if she was small or emotional or written off. It only cared if she could fly. She kept herself sharp in the simulator long after others clocked out. She learned every ridge and canyon of the local terrain, memorizing where a SAM could hide, where a strafing run could thread between friendlies. She recorded herself calling out target coordinates, playing them back until her own voice carried no hesitation. And in her quarters, tucked in the back of a drawer, lay a letter from her father, himself a retired mechanic who had loved the A-10 before she did. His words had become her compass. "The victories you'll never see in headlines are the ones that matter most. Stand even when no one else does, and you've already changed the outcome." That morning, the warning signs lit up long before anyone admitted it. Erin caught the chatter first, a burst of encrypted radio that drifted across a side channel she monitored out of habit. The words were foreign, but the cadence familiar: "Fire mission prep." She jotted the sequence, cross-referenced the coordinates, and felt her stomach tighten. The valley where SEAL Team 4 had been ordered to sweep was about to become a box of death. She carried the report to Brandt's office. He barely looked up. "You're not cleared to pull intercepts." "I didn't pull, I overheard." "Sir, they're setting an ambush. That valley is a kill zone. We need to reroute or put a 10 cover overhead." Brandt snapped the folder shut without reading it. "You've been told to stay in your lane. Intel has this handled." "Dismissed, Captain." She stood rigid, fighting to keep her voice level. "If I'm wrong, I'll take the reprimand. But if I'm right, you'll be burying 381 operators." His gaze hardened, but beneath it flickered something like pain. "I lost a pilot who thought just like you. Promised she saw what no one else did. She died. So will you if you keep chasing ghosts. Now get out." She left with her pulse hammering, fury chewing through her restraint. At the end of the corridor, Colonel Sarah Whitaker caught her arm. The older woman's eyes were calm but searching. "You saw something." "Yes, ma'am," Erin whispered. "And they won't listen." Whitaker held her gaze for a long beat, then said quietly, "Hold on to that report. We may need it sooner than you think." By afternoon, the valley erupted. Hale's voice cracked over the emergency frequency, ragged with disbelief. "We're surrounded. They knew we were coming. Jesus, there's no cover." Explosions thundered through the background, men shouting, the kind of chaos you only heard when hope bled out. Erin stood in the control tent, watching the live feed go red with markers, each one a SEAL pinned against rock. She looked at Brandt, who barked orders to reroute air assets, his jaw locked as though sheer force could bend physics. Fast movers circled but couldn't drop without incinerating friendlies. Apaches tried to nose in and were swatted from the sky. The feed shook with another explosion, then Hale again. "If someone doesn't come through, this is it." Erin's nails dug into her palms. She whispered to herself, words meant for no one else. 5 minutes. "Give me 5 minutes in the air, and I change this." But no one in command turned to her. They didn't even glance her way. She was invisible, until she wasn't. The control tent reeked of sweat, coffee gone sour, and the metallic tang of fear. Operators hunched over glowing screens, tracing icons that blinked red in the valley. Erin stood at the back, every muscle rigid. She had warned them. The coordinates she flagged were now bleeding with friendly positions, but Major Brandt's voice filled the space like a hammer on an anvil, loud, confident, forcing belief even when the numbers betrayed him. "Retask the Apaches from Sector 3, he barked. "They'll flank from the north." A junior officer hesitated. "Sir, the last Apache—" "Do it," Brandt snapped. "We don't freeze, we act." Erin wanted to shout, wanted to slam her fist on the table and drag their eyes to the obvious. The valley was a trap, mined with layers of overlapping fields of fire. Sending more helicopters was throwing wood on a blaze. Instead, she clenched her teeth until her jaw ached. Her father's words whispered in the back of her mind, "Stand, even when no one else does." She stepped closer to the main display. "Sir, with respect, Apaches can't survive that crossfire. The only platform that can is an A-10. It's armor and gun." Brandt turned, his face carved from stone. "You are not a factor in this operation, Captain. Don't confuse your fantasies with doctrine." "Fantasy?" Erin hissed, her composure cracking. She jabbed a finger at the glowing map. "That is a kill box. Every man down there is going to die unless someone gets low and dirty." The Warthog was built for this exact fight. The room went still. For a moment, even the radios seemed to pause. Brandt's nostrils flared. "I said stand down. That's an order." Colonel Whitaker's voice broke the silence, smooth as silk but firm enough to cut. "Major, she's not wrong about the platform." Brandt's head snapped toward her. "Ma'am, I'm not overriding your command," Whitaker said calmly, her eyes flicking to Erin like a lifeline, but ignoring the obvious won't save lives either. The tension snapped back into motion. Radios crackled, fresh explosions rumbling in the background. Hale's voice came through again, raw with panic. "We're boxed in." They've zeroed mortars on our fallback routes. Oh God, they're walking fire closer. Static swallowed the rest. A young tech looked up, pale. If they keep this up, sir, they won't last an hour. Brandt's lips thinned. Then they hold for an hour. Reinforcements are moving. Erin wanted to scream. Reinforcements? There were none within range. Every second lost was another body on the rocks. She felt the burn of helplessness clawing at her chest, but Whitaker's gaze held her steady. It wasn't encouragement, it was permission. Later, in the dim corridor outside, Whitaker caught her by the elbow. The older woman's tone was low, meant for Erin's ears alone. He won't bend. Brandt's too deep in his ghosts. But that doesn't make you wrong. Erin swallowed hard. 381 lives. I can't just watch them burn. Whitaker's eyes softened, lined by years of carrying battles that never made headlines. You may have to choose between your career and those lives. She pressed a small data stick into Erin's hand. Intercepts from logistics. They confirm your coordinates. I shouldn't be giving you this, but if you decide to act, make it count. Erin closed her fingers around it, her pulse a drumbeat in her ears. Why are you trusting me? Because I've seen what happens when good pilots stay silent, Whitaker said, and because sometimes the only way through command is around it. Back in her quarters, Erin slid the stick into her laptop. The screen filled with lines of intercepted chatter, coordinates scrawled with precision. Everything matched her instinct. Rashid al-Karim, the enemy commander, wasn't improvising. He had laid this ambush like a snare, baiting the SEALs deeper until escape was impossible. The brilliance was brutal, overlapping mortar arcs, SAM's position to shred rescue aircraft, ground forces pinning the valley mouth. No conventional airframe could survive that gauntlet. Except one. She glanced at the photo taped to her wall. Her father leaning against an A-10, grease on his hands, pride in his eyes. Beneath it, in his crooked handwriting, the Warthog eats what others fear. Outside, the base roared with activity, vehicles clattering, alarms bleating. Inside, Erin sat in silence, her decision calcifying like steel. In the valley, 381 men clung to rocks and prayed. On base, Brandt barked orders that dragged them closer to annihilation. And in the quiet between, Captain Erin Callahan's path narrowed into a single line. She would stand, even when no one else did. The trap snapped shut with the precision of a bear's jaw. At 0600, the SEALs moved into the valley, confident, their formation sweeping through scrub and rock like ink across parchment. At 0605, mortars began to fall. The first blasts hammered the ridgelines, choking the air with dust, and within seconds fire poured from concealed emplacements. Heavy machine guns stitched arcs across the valley floor, cutting off retreat. Lieutenant Marcus Hale dove behind a fractured boulder, headset rattling against his jaw. Contact left, contact right. Christ, they were waiting for us. His voice bled across multiple channels, static chewing at the edges. We're boxed. Repeat, we are boxed in. Men scattered, hugging whatever cover the terrain allowed. Dust clouds rolled like surf, carrying shrapnel and screams. Hale popped his head over the rock, saw the line of muzzle flashes crawling down the ridge like hungry eyes, and ducked back just before a bullet punched chips of stone into his face. He jammed his mic closer. Command, this is Havoc 2. We are in a kill zone, heavy fire from all sides. We need immediate air support, danger close. In the command tent, Erin stood frozen, her gaze locked on the digital map, where 381 blue markers blinked like desperate heartbeats. Red pips swarmed them, tightening with each passing minute. SEALs have engaged, sir, a tech reported, panic sharpening his voice. They're pinned. They're calling for air. Major Brandt leaned over the console, voice sharp. Push the Apaches again. They can clear the ridges. The operator swallowed. Sir, last bird didn't make it 2 clicks. Then double their run-in. Suppression fire first. Move. Erin couldn't stay silent. Sir, that's suicide. Those SAM sites are active. You'll be sending more pilots to die. Brandt didn't even glance at her. Get her out of here. But Hale's voice blasted through the speakers, ragged on the edge of hopelessness. We're surrounded. Mortars are walking fire right on top of us. We can't move. I've got wounded piling up. God, they're tearing us apart. Gunfire cracked through the transmission, followed by a scream. If you've got anything in the sky, now is the time. Erin stepped closer, heart pounding. Sir, you know as well as I do, the only aircraft that can dive into that valley, take those hits and still fight is the Warthog. You've got one on the tarmac. Let me fly it. Brandt turned slowly, eyes blazing. You're grounded, Captain. And even if you weren't, this is not your decision. My pilots will follow orders, not fantasies. She felt her nails cutting crescents into her palms. Orders don't stop bullets. Orders won't save them. Brandt's jaw flexed, the scar on his chin whitening. You don't know what it costs to lose control, Callahan. I do. And I won't watch another pilot burn because she thought she knew better. The tent pulsed with silence, broken only by the hiss of Hale's radio. They're closing in. Do you copy? We can't hold much longer. The sound of mortars detonating over his words felt like punches to Erin's chest. Every instinct screamed to move, to run, to act. But the room had become a cage, and Brandt its keeper. Colonel Whitaker stood at the edge of the tent, arms folded, eyes unreadable. When Erin caught her gaze, she saw neither permission nor denial. Only the silent reminder of the stick she'd given her the night before. Proof, ammunition. A path around the wall Brandt had built. Another transmission crackled through, Hale shouting over the roar of battle. If no one comes, this is it. Do you hear me? 381 men gone. The screen lit red as another SEAL beacon winked out. Erin clenched her fists so tight her bones ached. She whispered to herself the words her father had written, "Stand, even when no one else does." And in that moment, something inside her hardened. If Brandt wouldn't bend, she would break the chain herself. The valley had become a furnace. Black smoke coiled upward where an Apache had tried to nose in and been speared from the sky. Its burning carcass lit the ridgeline like a funeral pyre. Hale's voice cracked across the comms, trembling with fury and disbelief. They shot it down. Jesus, we can't get a bird past the first ridge. Command, do you copy? We're trapped, totally trapped. Inside the command tent, the air was thick enough to choke. Operators typed furiously, cycling through options, but every screen told the same story. No way in, no way out. Brandt's voice cut above the chaos, steady but strained. Bring the Falcons down to 15,000. Orbit and wait for coordinates. We'll find a window. Sir, the lieutenant said carefully, at 15,000 they can't see through the dust, and if they drop that low, they'll be inside the SAM envelope. Brandt snapped his gaze. Do it anyway. They'll find a vector. Erin stepped forward, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. Sir, with respect, fast movers won't help. They'll be blind. One lucky shot and we'll lose $100 million and 2 more pilots. You know, the only bird that can fly low, soak the hits and keep firing. Brandt's shoulders stiffened. Enough, Callahan. She pushed on, unable to stop. Let me take the Warthog. I've trained for this. The GAU-8 can shred those mortar pits without touching our men. The armor can survive what nothing else can. Give me 5 minutes and I'll carve them an exit. He turned on her, voice booming. You are grounded. Do you not hear me? You are not fit for combat, and I will not authorize a suicide run. The tent fell silent. Radios still crackled, screens still blinked, but every soul present felt the weight of Brandt's words. Erin's face burned. She bit back the surge of rage, but the images of the valley wouldn't leave her. Men pinned under rock, mortars marching closer. Hale's desperate voice begging into the void. Colonel Whitaker spoke at last, her tone even but heavy. Major, she has a point. The A-10 is designed for this. We're wasting time with assets that can't adapt. Brandt's eyes flickered, pain flashing for an instant. You weren't there when I watched a pilot burn alive because she broke formation. You didn't have to tell her parents why discipline matters more than instinct. He shook his head sharply. I won't let it happen again, not under my watch. Erin's voice dropped, raw and quiet. And what about telling 381 families their sons died because you were too afraid to let someone try? Brandt froze. For a second, the only sound was the distant thud of artillery rolling through the comms. His jaw clenched, but he didn't answer. The radio erupted with Hale's scream. "They're breaching our perimeter! We can't hold! If anyone's out there, we need you now!" Gunfire tore across the frequency, men shouting in the background, and then a chilling silence. Erin gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles whitened. "Sir, please, I'm not asking for permission to gamble. I'm asking to do the job I was trained for. Let me take the Angel." Brandt turned away, staring at the live feed as if sheer willpower could change the outcome. Denied. That's final. The tent seemed to shrink around Erin, the air suffocating, the walls pressing in. She felt the gaze of every operator, every officer who knew she was right but was bound by the chain of command. She saw Whitaker's face, tight, unreadable, but the faintest flick of her eyes told Erin everything. The decision had already been made, not by Brandt, not by the men cowering behind their consoles, but by Erin herself. The valley was screaming, the SEALs were dying, and if command wouldn't act, she would. Erin slipped out of the tent like a shadow. The storm of voices behind her still clashed over strategy, over options that no longer existed, but none of them noticed her vanish. She walked briskly down the corridor, boots echoing against concrete, heart pounding loud enough she thought the MPs at the checkpoint would hear. When they looked up, she forced her face calm, offered a clipped nod, and passed. Outside, the night air cut cold and sharp, carrying the reek of jet fuel. The flight line stretched ahead like a sleeping giant, her eyes locked on tail number 271, Iron Angel. Even at rest, the A-10 looked predatory, its cannon mouth yawning like a threat to the dark. She moved quickly, every step another hammer beat of defiance. The crew chief spotted her and blinked. "Captain, you don't have flight orders." Erin stopped just long enough to meet his gaze. "You didn't see me. And if anyone asks, you were never here." Something in her voice froze him, a calm edged with iron. He swallowed, then looked away. She climbed the ladder, palms steady though her chest shook. The cockpit smelled of oil, leather worn thin and possibility. Sliding into the seat felt like coming home. Her fingers danced across switches, the sequence muscle memory drilled 1,000 times after hours when no one was watching. Battery on, APU engaged, instruments flickering to life like eyes opening after sleep. The turbines wound up with a rising whine, deepening into a roar that rolled across the tarmac. Red lights blinked across the control tower. Voices erupted on the radio. Unauthorized startup, who's in 271, shut her down immediately. Erin pulled her oxygen mask tight, voice low but steady. "This is Captain Callahan. I'm taking the Iron Angel." Static exploded with Brandt's fury. "Callahan, you shut that aircraft down now or I'll have you in irons." She throttled up, the rumble shaking her bones. "You'll have your irons later. Right now you've got 381 men about to be vaporized. I won't let that happen." The canopy sealed, cocooning her in the storm. Warning lights blinked as the ground crew scattered, waving arms she refused to see. She released the brakes, the A-10 rolling forward like a beast eager to leap. Hale's voice cut across the emergency channel, hoarse, half drowned in gunfire. "Command, we're finished. Do you hear me? They've breached the line. Mortars dropping inside the perimeter. If someone doesn't come, God help us." Erin gripped the stick so hard her knuckles burned. She keyed the mic. "Havoc 2, this is Angel 271. Hold your ground." The silence that followed was almost worse than the gunfire. Then Hale's voice cracked through. Disbelief and relief twisted together. "Callahan, you're in the air?" "5 minutes," she said, eyes narrowing as the runway lights blurred past. "Give me 5 minutes and I'll blast you an exit." The Iron Angel screamed down the runway, nose lifting, wings biting into night. For a heartbeat, Erin felt weightless, untethered. Then gravity fell away and she was climbing into darkness, the valley already pulling her like a lodestone. Back in the command tent, Brandt raged at the screen. She's gone rogue. Scramble MPs, get her down. Whitaker's voice cut across, quiet but unyielding. She's already airborne, and if she fails, none of your MPs will matter. The operators exchanged glances, silent recognition dawning in their eyes. At 15,000 feet, Erin leveled out, the engines humming like a war drum. She toggled the master arm switch, lights blooming across her console. The GAU-8 cannon was hungry, its 7 barrels gleaming under the moon. She checked her stores, rockets, bombs, but most of all the gun, always the gun. Her father's words flickered in her memory, stand even when no one else does. She banked toward the coordinates, clouds breaking, the first flicker of fire painting the horizon. Below, the valley writhed with muzzle flashes and explosions, a death pit where men clung to life by fingernails. Erin's jaw set. 5 minutes, she whispered again. That's all it takes. And then she dove. The valley yawned beneath her, a cauldron of muzzle flashes and rolling thunder. Erin shoved the throttle forward, and the Iron Angel screamed into a dive, the HUD lighting up with target boxes. The GAU-8 spun to life with a mechanical growl that vibrated through her bones, 7 barrels thirsting for release. Angel 271, in hot, she called, and squeezed the trigger. The cannon roared like an angry god. A storm of depleted uranium rounds poured from the nose, each one a fist of tungsten ripping through rock and steel. The ridgeline erupted, mortar pits shredding, gun crews scattering. The SEALs below ducked, then lifted their heads in awe as the sky itself seemed to split open. Hale's voice cracked through the radio, ragged but alive. Holy hell, it's Callahan, she's chewing them apart! Erin banked hard, tracers streaking past her canopy. The Warthog shuddered as ground fire peppered its flanks. Warning tones screamed, one engine coughing smoke. She gritted her teeth, held the stick steady, and rolled into another pass. Hang on, Havoc 2. I'm not finished. She dropped low, so low her wingtips nearly kissed the ridges. Another squeeze of the trigger, and the GAU-8 answered with fire. Trenches collapsed, machine guns silenced. The cannon's thunder rolled across the valley like a promise. But the enemy wasn't folding. Rashid Al-Karim's men poured fresh fire up the slopes, RPGs streaking, mortars still pounding, SAMs hunting in the dark. A missile lock shrieked in her headset. She dumped flares, banked hard. The missile corkscrewing past so close, the heat shimmered her canopy. The Iron Angel shuddered, systems flashing amber. One hydraulic line bled pressure, her stick felt heavier in her hands. She checked her ammo counter, half gone already. Status, Angel? Hale's voice pleaded. Still breathing, she muttered. Then louder, I can't kill them all, but I can open you a door. She leveled out, eyes narrowing on the valley mouth, an avenue still bristling with enemy fire, but the only route wide enough for an exfil. She marked it on her HUD, heart slamming. Marcus, listen to me, she said, voice steel. Get your men ready. When I clear that road, you run, don't look back. Copy that, Hale whispered, Godspeed. Erin climbed, engines straining, then rolled inverted and dove again. Her teeth rattled, her body crushed against the harness. She locked onto the heaviest bunker, squeezed the trigger, and unleashed the rest of her wrath. The GAU-8 spat thunder. The bunker disintegrated in a plume of dust and fire, the shockwave flattening everything around it. She raked the line, bullets carving through trucks, mortar tubes, barricades. The valley mouth opened, torn raw, a corridor of flame. Alarms blared. A second missile slammed into her wing root, rocking the cockpit like a hammer blow. Warning lights cascaded red. Smoke filled her nostrils, but the Angel still flew. Exits open, she shouted. Go now, Marcus, move your men. On the ground, Hale bellowed orders. SEALs rose from cover, sprinting through smoke and fire, dragging wounded, eyes wide with disbelief. The sky thundered above them, Erin's Warthog carving the path. They ran beneath her shadow, hundreds of them, toward life. Erin's ammo counter blinked 0. She'd fired the last round. Her hands trembled on the stick, body screaming from G-forces. but her voice stayed calm. 5 minutes, she whispered, almost to herself. I told you I'd give you 5. Below, 381 men poured through the burning gap, the impossible exit ripped open by one pilot who refused to stand down. And as the Iron Angel clawed skyward, wounded but unbroken, Erin Callahan knew she had kept her promise. The Iron Angel staggered like a drunk giant, smoke trailing from its left engine. Warning klaxons shrieked in Erin's ears. Hydraulics low, fuel leak, fire detected. She fought the stick, muscles burning, as the aircraft threatened to roll and spiral into the valley floor. Her vision tunneled. For a moment she saw only black, the edges of her sight collapsing inward. She thought of her father's letter in the drawer, of the grease-stained words about victories unseen, and then she forced air into her lungs, grit into her voice. Not yet, not like this. She chopped throttle on the failing engine, rerouted systems, and slammed the rudder pedal. The Warthog groaned in protest but straightened, dragging itself back into level flight. Below, the last of the SEALs sprinted through the smoking corridor she had torn open. Marcus Hale's voice burst across the radio, hoarse but alight with disbelief. Angel 271, they're out. All 381, we're clear. You did it. Erin exhaled, chest aching. Her canopy was smeared with soot, the consoles blinking like Christmas in hell, but the Iron Angel still flew. On the valley floor, SEALs glanced skyward, sweat streaking grime down their faces. One of them, voice breaking, whispered into his mic, "She's our angel, angel of the valley." The name spread like wildfire through the comms, bouncing from man to man until the entire unit was shouting it, a chant that replaced despair with awe. Erin swallowed hard, eyes stinging. She had been mocked, dismissed, grounded. And now, in the mouths of the men she had saved, she was something else entirely. Back at Harrison Air Base, the command tent buzzed in stunned silence. Operators stared at the screens where the impossible had unfolded. Brandt's face was pale, his jaw locked so tight it quivered. Colonel Whitaker finally spoke, her tone soft but carrying the weight of a hammer. The moment she powered up that bird, Major, you lost this battle of wills, and she won it for every man on the ground. Brandt snapped. She went rogue. She disobeyed direct orders. Whitaker turned, eyes steady, and she did so with my authorization. The tent froze. Brandt's head whipped toward her. What? Whitaker folded her arms. When she came to me with those intercepts, I transferred provisional combat authority to her call sign. Quietly, legally. You've been shouting about insubordination, but the record will show she flew under sanction. Gasps rippled through the room. Erin, climbing skyward with a crippled engine, had never been completely alone. Brandt's face flushed red. You... Major, Whitaker cut him off, her voice like a blade. History will remember the woman who saved 381 SEALs, not the man who tried to stop her. On the open channel, Hale's voice thundered. Command, this is Havoc 2. Be advised, all units clear thanks to Angel 271. You may court-martial her later, but today she saved every damn one of us. The comms erupted with cheers, raw and unfiltered. Erin heard it, every word. She leaned back against the seat, exhausted but unbroken, a faint smile tugging at her lips. The Iron Angel wheezed and rattled around her, but it still carried her skyward, wings heavy with smoke yet refusing to fold. She wasn't just Erin Callahan, the grounded pilot, the too emotional officer. She was the angel of the valley, and the world had just seen her fly. The Iron Angel limped back across the desert sky, smoke trailing in its wake like a wounded predator refusing to fall. When Erin finally touched wheels to tarmac, the landing gear screeched and shuddered, threatening collapse. She wrestled the stick, coaxing the battered bird straight until it groaned to a halt at the far end of the runway. For a long moment she just sat there, head bowed, the smell of scorched hydraulics filling her lungs. She was alive. And so were 381 SEALs. Emergency crews swarmed, spraying foam over the left engine, yanking chocks into place. The canopy hissed open. Erin pulled off her mask and let the night air sting her face. She climbed down, her boots hitting the asphalt, legs trembling under the weight of exhaustion and adrenaline. A crewman started to salute, then hesitated, as if unsure whether to treat her as hero or criminal. Erin gave a faint nod, then walked past without a word. Inside the command tent, Brandt stood stiff as a statue. The screens still glowed with data, but the room was hushed. Everyone had heard Hale's transmission. Everyone had heard the SEALs chanting her name. The Major's face was pale, lips thin, eyes burning with a mixture of fury and shame. Colonel Whitaker entered behind Erin, her presence like a storm breaking. She spoke first, clear and measured. 381 men walked out of that valley, alive, because Captain Callahan refused to let them die. Brandt snapped. She disobeyed direct orders. She stole an aircraft. She endangered the chain of command. Whitaker's gaze hardened. She followed the higher order, to save lives. And unless you'd prefer to explain to Washington why nearly 400 special operators were left in body bags, I suggest you temper your outrage. The operators in the tent shifted, silent witnesses. Brandt realized he was already outnumbered, his authority crumbling. But still he clung to it, as if holding a sword by the blade. This isn't how discipline works. If we start rewarding enough... Whitaker's voice cut through. Your fear blinded you, Lucas. Hers didn't. Brandt's eyes dropped, the words slicing deeper than any reprimand. For him, the battle was lost. Days later, the official story released to the press was dry, sanitized, SEAL unit extricated with close air support, minimal casualties, no names, no details. Erin wasn't decorated at a parade, her actions buried in classified reports. On paper, she was just another pilot, but on the ground, the truth spread faster than any communique. The SEALs told it first, on base, in whispers, then in shouts at bars and bunks. They called her the Angel of the Valley, the woman who flew into hell when every other option failed. Hale himself visited her quarters, a bandage over his cheek, exhaustion etched into his face. He saluted, then clasped her hand. They'll never print your name, but none of us will ever forget it. You gave us our lives back. Erin met his eyes, humbled. I just did what anyone should have. He shook his head firmly. No, you did what no one else dared. In the weeks that followed, she returned to routine duties, flying training sorties, filing reports. Brandt kept his distance, his authority diminished, his voice no longer carrying the same weight. Whitaker quietly arranged for Erin to be tapped into a new program, an advanced CAS doctrine initiative, where her experience would shape future tactics. She accepted, knowing it meant influencing the next generation more than receiving medals. One evening, as the sun bled red across the hangars, Erin walked out to the Iron Angel. The mechanics had patched its wounds, polished its scars, and on the nose they had painted fresh white numbers, 381. She stopped in front of it, hand brushing the steel, her throat tight. The number wasn't just for the men she saved, it was for the reminder that sometimes one choice, one stand, could tilt the balance for hundreds. She leaned her forehead against the cool fuselage, whispering to herself, 5 minutes, that's all it took. In the distance, the flag at the base entrance stirred in the wind. Planes taxied, engines roared, life moved forward as though nothing had happened. But beneath the surface, a story had been carved into the marrow of every man who walked out of that valley. They had seen a simple woman become something more than their commanders believed possible. Erin turned away from the Angel, her silhouette fading into dusk. She wasn't looking for medals or headlines. She had her legacy, painted in white across steel, carried in the chants of men who lived to tell it. And somewhere down the line, when another pilot faced the choice between obedience and doing what was right, her story would rise again, quiet but unyielding, like the roar of a cannon echoing through a valley that once burned with fire. 381 Navy SEALs walked out of that valley alive, because one woman refused to stay grounded. She wasn't supposed to fly, she wasn't supposed to disobey. But when every other option failed, Captain Erin Callahan turned a crippled A-10 into the only exit they had. And now the real question, If you were standing in her boots, would you have followed orders or broken them to save 381 lives? I want to hear your answer. Drop it in the comments below. If this story hit you as hard as it hit me, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell, because here on A Simple Woman, we bring you the untold stories. The ones they'll never put in the history books, but the ones you'll never forget. The next chapter is already waiting, and trust me, you won't want to miss it.